There is one of the loneliest feelings that so many parents have experienced, but rarely have the courage to say out loud. It is when the whole world seems to have fallen asleep, and you are still sitting in a dark room, holding your baby in your arms. Your eyes burn from lack of sleep. Your arms ache with exhaustion. You have tried feeding your baby, changing the diaper, holding your baby close, walking back and forth around the room, singing familiar lullabies, and playing the gentle music that everyone says helps babies sleep better. And yet, your baby is still crying. In that moment, the thing that hurts the most is not the exhaustion. It is the question that keeps repeating in your mind. What am I doing wrong? So many people believe that once a baby is born, the instinct to be a parent will simply appear. But reality is different. No one begins this journey with all the answers. We learn every day, make mistakes every day, and love our children with everything we know at that moment. The sad thing is that many pieces of advice passed down from one generation to the next sound perfectly reasonable. But when applied to newborns, they can unintentionally leave both parents and babies even more exhausted. Not because the advice comes from a bad place, but because science has helped us understand far more about infant sleep than people once knew. Some babies are not difficult. Some babies are not being naughty. Some babies are not trying to make their parents suffer. They are simply communicating in the only way they know how, by crying. If we do not understand what that cry is trying to say, the whole family can easily fall into a vicious cycle. The baby becomes more tired and finds it harder to sleep. The parents become more anxious and try even harder. And the more they do, the more overstimulated the baby may become, making it even harder to settle. Then every morning, parents see other families online saying that their babies sleep through the night from a very early age. You begin to doubt yourself. Is my baby different? Am I caring for my baby the wrong way? Am I not good enough? The truth is, you are not alone. So many families have felt exactly the same way. The difference is not that they were lucky enough to have an easier baby. The difference is that they gradually learned to observe their baby instead of trying to force their baby to match adult expectations. One of the most common misconceptions is believing that a newborn will sleep once they are truly tired. Adults are often like that. After a long day, the more exhausted we are, the more we want to climb into bed. But newborns do not work that way. When a baby becomes overtired, the body begins releasing hormones that help the baby stay alert in order to cope with the exhaustion. It is similar to how adults can be so stressed that they cannot sleep, even when they are exhausted. That is why many parents hold their baby for hours, yet the baby still cannot fall asleep, not because the baby is stubborn, but because that tiny body is overwhelmed. What is remarkable is that before crying, most newborns send many small signals. Some begin to stare into the distance. Some turn their faces away when people try to play with them. Some rub their eyes gently. Some tug at their ears. Some yawn repeatedly. Some suddenly become unusually quiet. These are all ways your baby is saying, "I am getting tired." But because those signals are so subtle, we often miss them. We think the baby still wants to play. We try to make the baby laugh. We show another toy. We take a few more photos. Just a few minutes later, the baby starts crying loudly. At that point, many people assume the baby suddenly became fussy. In reality, the baby had been trying to tell us earlier. We just did not notice. Imagine that you have had an incredibly long day. You are already tired, but instead of going home to rest, someone takes you to a party filled with bright lights, music, and constant conversation. How would you feel? That is very similar to what a baby feels when kept awake for too long. For a newborn, the world is entirely new. Every face, every sound, every ray of light, every color is an experience that the baby's immature brain must process. That takes an enormous amount of energy. So rest is not only about recovering energy. It is also the time when the brain processes everything the baby has just learned. Another mistake many families make is believing that less daytime sleep will lead to better nighttime sleep. The idea sounds logical. But with newborns, the opposite is often true. A baby who does not get enough sleep during the day usually reaches the evening already overtired. And once overtired, nighttime sleep often becomes even more fragmented. They startle more easily, wake more frequently, and find it harder to fall back asleep on their own. Many parents are surprised to discover that when their baby gets enough short naps during the day, evenings become much calmer. Not because of magic, but because the baby's body is no longer fighting exhaustion. Another thing that surprises many parents is that newborns do not need a perfect schedule. Adults love precise timing. 7 o'clock for breakfast, noon for a nap, 6 o'clock for a bath, 8 o'clock for bedtime. But during the first months of life, a baby's internal clock is still developing. Some days, the baby sleeps more. Some days, less. Some evenings, the baby gets sleepy early. Some evenings, the baby stays alert longer. That does not mean you have done anything wrong. Raising a baby is not about managing a clock. It is about learning to listen to a tiny human being who is growing and changing every day. That does not mean abandoning all routines. Gentle, consistent routines are still valuable. A quieter room, softer lighting after dark, a familiar sequence such as changing the diaper, cuddling, singing a lullaby, or reading a short story. Those small things help your baby gradually understand that it is time for the body to rest. More importantly, they give your baby a sense of safety. Because before babies learn how to sleep well, the first thing they learn is that when they need someone, a loving person will be there beside them. That is the true foundation of peaceful sleep. Then there comes a moment that almost every parent experiences. You have just laid your baby down after nearly an hour of soothing. At last, your baby has fallen asleep. You quietly take a few careful steps backward, trying not to make the slightest sound. All you are thinking about is finally eating a warm meal, taking a quick shower, or simply sitting down to rest for a few minutes. But less than 10 minutes later, the crying starts again. That moment makes many parents believe they have a baby who is a terrible sleeper. Some even blame themselves, thinking they are not patient enough, not skillful enough, or simply do not understand their baby well enough. The truth is, many times the reason is not you. What many people do not realize is that a newborn's sleep is very different from an adult's sleep. Adults can stay in deep sleep for long periods. Newborns move through short sleep cycles over and over again. During those transitions, they may squirm, make little noises, open their eyes for a few seconds, or even let out a soft cry before drifting back to sleep. If you have never known this, the natural reaction of almost every parent is to pick the baby up immediately. That reaction comes from love. No one wants to ignore their baby. But sometimes, moving too quickly unintentionally interrupts a sleep cycle that the baby could have continued on their own. That does not mean ignoring your baby's cries. It simply means giving your baby a few moments to see what is really happening. If the crying grows louder, if your baby is truly awake, then of course your baby needs you. But if your baby only squirms, makes a few small sounds, and gradually settles again, there is a good chance your baby was still asleep. It is a small difference, but it can completely change countless sleepless nights for the whole family. Another thing many parents overlook is the sleep environment. When preparing to welcome a new baby, every parent wants to create a beautiful nursery, colorful pictures, a mobile hanging above the crib, a soft night light, lovely gifts from family and friends. Every single one of those things is filled with love, but for a baby who is only a few weeks old, the world is already exciting enough. Your baby's brain has to process millions of new experiences every day. A beam of sunlight coming through the window, a dog barking outside, the television in another room, or the flashing light from a toy can all be enough to spark curiosity and make it harder to settle down. Adults often think a beautiful room feels relaxing. Newborns need something different. They need a space that is simple, calm, and free from unnecessary stimulation. Sometimes, a slightly darker room, a comfortable temperature, and the steady sound of a fan or white noise are far more helpful than the most beautifully decorated nursery. Not because babies love darkness, but because when there is less competing for their attention, their brains can more easily understand that it is time to rest. Another common mistake comes from love itself. It is the desire to do everything perfectly. You read books, you watch videos, you follow parenting experts, you join parenting groups. Every source seems to offer different advice. One person says to put your baby down while still awake. Another says to hold your baby until they are fast asleep. One recommends a strict schedule. Another tells you to follow your baby's lead. The more you read, the more confused you become. Then you begin comparing yourself with everyone else. Someone else's baby sleeps through the night. Yours still wakes up 3 or 4 times. Someone else's baby falls asleep the moment they are placed in the crib. Yours opens their eyes the second their back touches the mattress. That comparison quietly steals the joy from parenting. What we often forget is that no two babies are exactly alike. From the very beginning, every child has a unique temperament. Some babies are highly sensitive to sound. Some adapt more easily. Some need to be held more often. Others prefer a little more space when falling asleep. What works beautifully for one family may not work at all for another. So, instead of trying to become the perfect version of someone you see online, become the best observer of your own baby. No one on the internet knows your baby better than you do. No one notices the way your baby yawns. No one sees how your baby's eyes change when sleepiness begins. No one can tell which cry means hunger, which one means tiredness, or which one simply means, I want to be close to you. Those are things that can only be learned over time, and time is the most patient teacher of all. Many parents also worry when their baby is still not sleeping through the night after several months. They believe they must be doing something wrong. But the truth is that sleep develops gradually, just like rolling over, crawling, and walking. There is no single day when every baby suddenly begins sleeping through the night. Every child develops at their own pace. What matters is not whether your baby reaches that milestone sooner or later than someone else's child. What matters is that your baby is growing up with a deep sense of security. A baby who knows that someone will come when they are frightened. Someone will feed them when they are hungry. Someone will comfort them when they are uncomfortable. That sense of safety becomes the foundation that helps a child gradually learn to relax and sleep more peacefully. There may still be nights when you feel completely exhausted. There may be nights when nothing seems to work. There may be mornings when you look in the mirror and barely recognize the tired face staring back at you. If that is where you are right now, please remember this. Your exhaustion is not proof that you are a bad mother or a bad father. It is simply proof that you are doing everything you can for a tiny little person who still does not have the words to tell you what they need. That is an incredibly difficult job, and it is also one of the most meaningful jobs a person will ever have. Perhaps the hardest part of those first few months is not waking up several times every night. The hardest part is the pressure you put on yourself. You want to respond the moment your baby cries. You want to understand exactly what your baby needs. You want every decision you make to be the right one. But raising a newborn has never been a test with only one correct answer. It is a journey of watching, adjusting, and learning. There will be days when you feel like you finally understand your baby. Then the very next day, everything changes. That is completely normal. Newborns grow every single day. As their bodies develop, their sleep needs change as well. Something that worked perfectly last week may no longer work this week. That does not mean you have failed. It simply means your baby is growing. That is why flexibility is often far more valuable than trying to follow a rigid schedule. A routine can certainly provide stability. But if we spend all our time looking at the clock instead of looking at the baby in front of us, we may miss what our child truly needs. Some days your baby takes shorter naps because they are going through a new stage of development. Some days your baby stays awake a little longer because they are fascinated by the world around them. Some days your baby simply wants to be held more because they need extra reassurance. All of these things are completely normal during the first year of life. Many parents also worry that holding their baby too much will create bad habits. But during those early months, being held is not a luxury. It is a biological need. For many months before birth, your baby lived surrounded by the sound of your heartbeat, the warmth of your body, and the gentle rhythm of your movements. Then suddenly, everything changed. The lights became brighter, the sounds became louder, the world became much bigger. Being held in your arms helps your baby feel that they are still safe. As your baby's nervous system matures, they will gradually learn to regulate their emotions and become more independent in their sleep. Not because we forced them, but because they were finally ready. There is something beautiful that many parents only realize when they look back. These long nights will not last forever. One day, you will place your baby in the crib, and they will smile before peacefully drifting off to sleep. One day, you will wake up and realize you slept through the entire night. One day, the room that was once filled with tears will become quiet again, and strangely enough, you may even miss these exhausting days, not because they were easy, but because they were the days when your baby needed you the most. If today you feel like you are not doing enough, take a moment to look at everything you have already done. You have gotten out of bed while the rest of the world was asleep. You have held your baby until your arms could barely carry any more. You have given up warm meals, uninterrupted sleep, and so much of your own time. You have done all of that because of love, and that love is worth more than any parenting method. Knowledge matters. Understanding how newborn sleep works can help you worry less and make choices that fit your family better. But knowledge only becomes truly meaningful when it is paired with kindness toward yourself. There will be days when everything goes well. There will also be days when you make mistakes. That does not make you a bad parent. What makes a child feel deeply loved is not having parents who never make mistakes. It is having parents who keep showing up, keep learning, and keep trying to understand them a little better than yesterday. You may not remember exactly how many sleepless nights you went through, but your child will grow up remembering something far more important. Whenever they needed someone, someone was always there. That is the greatest gift a child can ever receive. So if there is one thing to carry with you after listening to this, let it be this: be a little gentler with yourself. Do not try to become a perfect mother or a perfect father. Instead, become the kind of parent who is always willing to listen, not only with your ears, but with your attention, with your patience, with your presence. Your baby does not need someone who has every answer. Your baby simply needs someone who is willing to learn alongside them as they grow. And sometimes, your calm presence is the very thing that helps your baby find peaceful sleep more than any tip or technique ever could.